Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, controversy surrounding a major medical announcement from the government. President Trump presents a new report backed by HHS Secretary RFK Jr. that links the use of Tylenol by pregnant women to autism. This despite lack of evidence proving that theory.
I'm Steve Osensami here at the CDC with reaction to that announcement. What the government suggests that pregnant women take instead of Tylenol, and the reaction from doctors and patients.
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is returning to the airwaves with a new show to air tomorrow night. This after Kimmel was suspended by ABC last week following comments about Charlie Kirk in the wake of his death, setting off a nationwide debate about free speech.
I'm Matt Gutman in Hollywood, just outside the Jimmy Kimmel Live stage, where he will be taping in just about 24 hours what led to his return to late night TV, and why now.
France becomes the latest country to recognize Palestine as a state, joining U.S. allies Britain, Canada, Australia, and Portugal. This as world leaders gather here in New York for the United Nations General Assembly, with much of the focus on the war between Israel and Gaza. A very different reality is happening on the ground, however, as our Tom Sophie Burridge found out on a visit to Palestinian villages in the West Bank for tonight's Prime Focus.
Talk about this being ethnic cleansing. Is there any doubt in your mind?
It is ethnic cleansing, yeah.
She leapt onto the scene as the youngest female leader in the world, then suddenly left her position early as Prime Minister of New Zealand. Tonight, we talked to Jacinda Ardern about what was behind that decision.
Once you made the decision that you were going to step down, did it immediately feel like a load off?
And how her time away has changed her perspective on what makes a good world leader.
And Herm Edwards is back, talking about this weekend's best games and what to look for on the field tonight.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Tonight, we're following two big developing stories. Disney's decision to bring back late night host Jimmy Kimmel after a swarm of controversy surrounding his comments after Charlie Kirk's death. But first, we do begin with the Trump administration linking Tylenol use during pregnancy to a higher risk of autism. The president, during a White House news conference late today, repeatedly said, if you're pregnant, don't take Tylenol, instead suggesting that women tough it out. But tonight, several major medical groups and the maker of Tylenol flat out reject the White House claim, saying studies have not shown a direct cause and effect between Tylenol's active ingredient, acetaminophen, and autism, leaving doctors concerned who say untreated fever during pregnancy also leads to a higher risk of stillbirth. Meanwhile, President Trump is now promoting the not yet FDA-approved drug leucovorin, which is used during cancer treatment despite limited evidence of benefit. We'll talk with a medical expert about this in just a moment, but first, ABC's Steve Osensami leads us off from CDC headquarters in Atlanta tonight.
Here's how the president's message to pregnant women played out on live television tonight.
Effective immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of acetaminophen, is that okay? Which is basically commonly known as Tylenol, during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly.
With Health Secretary RFK Jr. by his side, who has long shared provably wrong theories about what causes autism, President Trump is warning pregnant women about using the painkiller acetaminophen, commonly sold as Tylenol, saying that there are studies showing a possible link between using the drug during pregnancy with an increased risk of bearing children with autism.
Bobby wants to be very careful with what he says, and he should, but I'm not so careful with what I say. But you have certain groups, the Amish as an example, they have essentially no autism.
But according to scientists, the Amish do indeed have cases of autism.
Today, the FDA will issue a physician's notice about the risk of acetaminophen during pregnancy and begin the process to initiate a safety label change.
Leading medical groups say that there have been dozens of large studies over the decades, and not one of them found that acetaminophen causes autism. They worry that pregnant women will now be afraid to take the drug, even when they have a fever, which they say can be more dangerous for the baby.
It's an announcement that is bound to raise so much fear, so much anxiety among pregnant women.
The makers of Tylenol say that their drug is the safest pain reliever option for pregnant women. Dr. Edith Bracho Sanchez is a New York pediatrician who is pregnant with her second child and shares that she's still taking the drug herself.
Uncontrolled fevers in pregnancy pose an increased risk of miscarriage, of neural developmental defects. Knowing what I know about the risks of Tylenol in pregnancy versus the risks of an uncontrolled fever, I would take Tylenol again in this pregnancy.
Tonight, the president is also recommending a new drug to treat autism called leucovorin, a drug usually prescribed to help manage the side effects of chemotherapy. Early studies show that it may help some, but not all autistic children improve speech and comprehension, but it's not at all a cure.
Steve Osunsami joins us now. Steve, what's the FDA doing in the wake of the president's announcement?
So the FDA is now going to change the label on bottles of Tylenol. And they're sending notes to doctors, encouraging them to warn pregnant women about the potential dangers. But there's something else, Lindsay, I should add to all this, and that is that Tylenol is a very important drug for pregnant women because they're told not to use ibuprofen because that painkiller can increase the risk of miscarriages. Lindsay?
All right, Steve Osunsami for us. Thanks so much, Steve. For more on this, let's bring in Dr. Jessica Steyer, a public health scientist and founder of Unbiased Science. She joins us now. Thank you so much. We just heard the president say that pregnant women should not take acetaminophen, also known by the brand name Tylenol, unless they can't, quote, tough it out, saying use can lead to autism, but provided no scientific link. Is there any scientific data that shows Tylenol can be dangerous to pregnant women or that it can be linked to an increase in autism?
No. Today was a really terrible day for public health. No, the best quality evidence does not show that acetaminophen causes autism. There have been dozens of studies that have investigated this. None have found a causal link between Tylenol, acetaminophen, and autism. There was this massive study out of Sweden that included over 2.5 million children, about 180,000 of them exposed to Tylenol in utero, that found that using sibling comparisons, so when we actually controlled for genetics, because we know there's such a strong genetic component to autism, there was zero association between taking acetaminophen in pregnancy and autism. You'll see that there have been some observational studies that have found some association. It's very weak evidence. There was one meta-analysis that was actually cited during today's press conference, but actually the lead author of that study that was out of Mount Sinai and Harvard, I believe, he himself said that this study cannot answer the question about causation. He actually used an analogy about ice cream sales and violent crime. Both rise in the summer, but we know that ice cream does not cause violent crime.
And why is it important to treat fevers during pregnancy?
It is so important to treat fevers. We know there are known risks associated with fevers, right? So we know that it could increase neural tube defects, things like spina bifida, congenital heart defects, stillbirth, preterm delivery, and more. And as many have noted, Tylenol is one of the only safe options for pregnant women. We know that we can't take NSAIDs like ibuprofen or aspirin. And so Tylenol remains our safest option. So no, we should not tough it out because fever has very well-established known risks.
There's been a lot of pressure from Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Make America Healthy Again campaign to find a so-called cause in the rise of autism cases in the United States. Could there be a single cause to point to?
Absolutely not. And actually, it was even mentioned during the press conference today that we know that it's multi-causal, right? There are multiple different factors that are interacting with each other. So if you are a mother of an autistic child who did take Tylenol during pregnancy, you should feel zero guilt, right? We know that there's a strong genetic component. We know that there's some evidence that other factors like parental age and other environmental factors can contribute to the increased likelihood of autism. But again, there is absolutely no singular cause.
The Trump administration has started an approval process for a drug called leucovorin to help the symptoms for some children with autism, despite limited evidence of benefit. What do we know about that drug?
Yeah, so leucovorin is a prescription form of folate, basically vitamin B9, and it's typically used to reduce side effects from chemotherapy. Now, at very high doses, it requires a prescription. It is actually available at lower doses over the counter as a supplement. There are just a handful of very small studies, primarily in adults, not children, that found modest improvement in some autism symptoms. However, this is certainly very preliminary research. There's nothing concrete, so it is absolutely premature to say that this is a treatment. And we know that even in the research that's been done, that is very, very limited. It was only shown to have some benefit in a very small subset of children. So a lot more research is needed.
The president also shared misinformation about vaccines in children, saying babies are loaded up with stuff. What are the current guidelines when it comes to vaccines in children? Has there ever been any scientific link between vaccines and autism?
Oh my gosh, no. We have so many decades of incredibly robust data. We have investigated this every which way, and there is zero link between vaccines and autism. I heard a lot of falsehoods today during the press conference, one of which was that children are loaded up with something like 80 vaccines during childhood. That's not accurate. It's closer to 50, and the vaccine schedule is very well studied, and we recommend vaccines at very specific points during childhood to make sure that our children are very well protected against these diseases that many of us have never heard of or we've forgotten because vaccines are so effective at preventing them.
Dr. Jessica Steyer, we thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
Now to another big developing story, the decision to bring back late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. ABC's parent company Disney announced Kimmel will return tomorrow after he was suspended last week over his comments tied to the assassination of political conservative Charlie Kirk, a suspension that set off a firestorm of debate about free speech in America. Here's ABC's Matt Gutman.
Tonight, Disney ABC announcing Jimmy Kimmel will return to the air tomorrow night after they paused the show indefinitely after comments he made about the ideology of the suspect in Charlie Kirk's killing. Tonight, Disney saying in a statement, last Wednesday we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It is a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. The temporary pause came after pressure from President Trump's FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, who blasted Kimmel's comments. Carr pressuring local ABC stations to stop airing Kimmel's late-night show, Jimmy Kimmel Live.
We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel. Or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Disney ABC then suspended Kimmel's show, quote, indefinitely from the entire network to allow for discussions with Kimmel and his team. What followed was a fierce debate over free speech in this country, critics suggesting the move was caving to political pressure and jeopardizing free speech. Even some Republicans and well-known conservatives speaking out against censorship and the importance of protecting free speech. Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz comparing Brendan Carr's comments to those of a mafia boss.
He says, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
President Trump even suggesting the late-night hosts on NBC should be next, and suggested outlets who repeatedly report critically on the president could lose their broadcast licenses.
They give me only bad publicity or press. I mean,
they're getting a license, I would think maybe their license should be taken away. It will be up to Brendan Carr.
Those words from the president, who signed an executive order on day one pledging to protect free speech.
And I have stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back.
Today at the White House, the press secretary was asked what message this all sends to Americans who might be afraid to express their own beliefs.
We have a right to free speech in this country. The president supports it. It is protected by our beautiful Constitution. And Americans should not cower in fear. They should rise up in courage to continue speaking the truth.
Matt Gutman joins us now from Los Angeles tonight. Matt, the FCC chairman weighed in again on the comments he made to local stations last week. What's he saying now?
Linsey, this is the first time we've heard from Brendan Carr this week since the controversy between Disney, Jimmy Kimmel, and the FCC erupted last week. And this is what he said at the Concordia Summit in New York. He was trying to explain his position. What I spoke about last week is that when concerns are raised about news distortion, he said, there's an easy way for parties to address that and work that out. In the main, he said, that takes place between local television stations that are licensed by the FCC and what we call national programmers like Disney. They work that out, and it doesn't need to be any involvement by the FCC. And we should note, Linsey, that in about 24 hours from right now, Jimmy Kimmel and his producers and writers will be back at that stage behind me for what must be a very highly anticipated return to late night TV. Linsey.
I think that's safe to say. All right, Matt Gutman, our thanks to you. President Trump publicly called out his Attorney General Pam Bondi, pushing her to move faster in prosecuting his political enemies. The White House was pressed on this today. Here's ABC's senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott.
Tonight, the White House defending President Trump after he openly urged Attorney General Pam Bondi to go after his political opponents.
No, I just want people to act. They have to act.
Over the weekend, in an extraordinary post, the president addressing Bondi directly, writing, Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially, same old story as last time, all talk, no action. Nothing is being done. He mentioned specific targets, former FBI Director James Comey, California Senator Adam Schiff, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, saying we can't delay any longer. The president recently forced out his handpicked U.S. attorney from Virginia, sources tell ABC News, for failing to come up with enough evidence to bring charges against Letitia James, who had successfully sued Trump for business fraud. The president's new choice for that office arriving today, Lindsay Halligan, who, like so many top DOJ officials, was once one of the president's personal attorneys. Halligan, who practiced insurance law, has never prosecuted a case. Still, President Trump insisting she will get things moving.
We have to act fast, one way or the other. One way or the other. They're guilty, they're not guilty, we have to act fast. If they're not guilty, that's fine. If they are guilty or if they should be charged, they should be charged. And we have to do it now.
Today, ABC's Selena Wang asking the White House if the president is weaponizing the Justice Department.
He wants to see accountability for those who abuse their office and abuse their power. And Letitia James absolutely did that, whether you want to admit it or not.
Is that not retribution, though?
Jeff, it's accountability.
It comes as we learn the Justice Department has shut down an investigation into a close Trump ally, border czar Tom Homan. Sources tell ABC News that in 2024, Homan was recorded accepting a $50,000 bag of cash from FBI agents posing as business executives. Sources say Homan agreed to potentially help the men get government contracts if Trump won the election. But shortly after Trump took office, that case was closed.
Rachel Scott joins us now. Great to have you in studio. What's the latest you can tell us about the investigation into border czar Tom Homan?
Well, the White House was pressed repeatedly about this in today's press briefing. The press secretary says that the White House is fully standing behind Tom Homan. They are insisting that he has done absolutely nothing wrong and there's no evidence to prove otherwise. And at this point, the investigation as it stands is now closed, we're told.
All right, Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. World leaders are gathering at the United Nations General Assembly, where Israel's war in Gaza is set to be a main topic. Amid Israel's ground and air assault on Gaza City, France is joining other countries, including Australia, Britain, and Canada, in recognizing the Palestinian state. President Trump is set to address the General Assembly tomorrow. Here's ABC's chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, as Israel intensifies its air and ground assault on Gaza City,
France joining a growing number of key allies, including Britain and Canada, now formally recognizing a Palestinian state. President Emmanuel Macron saying the time has come, citing his country's commitment to peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slamming the decision, saying unequivocally there will be no Palestinian state, calling it tantamount to rewarding terrorism. The White House agrees.
These decisions are just more talk and not enough action from some of our friends and allies.
Tonight, Hamas praising the move and crediting its horrific October 7th attack on Israel, saying the fruits of October 7th are what caused the entire world to open its eyes to the Palestinian issue. Those words speaking volumes for Linsey Davis, whose brother, Aviatar, was taken hostage by Hamas and recently seen in disturbing video inside a tunnel in Gaza.
Our thanks to Martha Raddatz. Joining us tonight is Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, in recent news, you have France that just yesterday, along with about a dozen other countries, said that they would recognize Palestinian statehood. Does it weigh on you, or what is your response that America really remains an outlier with its allegiance to Israel?
Yeah, I mean, it is a really good news that right now about nearly 75% of UN member states have recognized a Palestinian state. It is important for the United States to engage in a process where it does lead to that recognition. And join the rest of the world. We know that it is really important for us to do everything that we can to end the genocide that's taking place in Gaza, to have humanitarian access, to stop the starvation, and finally come to a resolution to this decade-long conflict that we have seen between the people of Palestine and the people of Israel.
In reaction to some comments that you had made about Charlie Kirk and his passing, President Trump recently referred to you as scum. He went on to call your home country, Somalia, saying it was plagued by a lack of central government control, persistent poverty, hunger, terrorism, piracy. He went on. What's your response to that and to others who have said you should go back to where you've come from?
Yeah. Well, it is disgusting for the President of the United States to disparage a country that we have devoted so much energy in helping stabilize. He certainly knows that Somalia does have a government. They're on their way in creating some strides to make sure that they have stability, security, and economic vitality. But also it is important for us to recognize just how wrong, xenophobic, bigoted it is for the President of the United States to join the online trolls in saying that I should be sent back to where I came from.
Your reaction, though, on the flip side to people who are saying, look, we often look to politicians as leaders and we need to turn the temperature down, and you've recently said that the country is being run by a bunch of idiots.
Mm-hmm. Well, our president is embarrassing on a national stage. You've seen him not understand that members of Congress can't be impeached, as he calls for my impeachment. You've seen the chaotic ways in which he has led the country. You see him lie and not have an understanding that tariffs are a hidden tax on Americans. So it is really important for us to recognize that we're not being led by the brightest of our nation.
In the midst of this climate, you certainly have seen your own threats to your life. Does it change at all what you say? Has it changed your behavior?
There's been a correlation between the level of death threats that I have and who has been the president. In Trump's first presidential administration, I had one of the highest death threats for a member of Congress, and it was because the president couldn't stop invoking his xenophobia and bigotry towards not just myself, but every identity that I represent, whether it is the fact that I am an immigrant that comes from Africa, the fact that I'm Muslim and Black here in the United States. And, I had 4 years of relative calmness with the Biden administration that shows the kind of leadership that Democrats present moment when they have the power. And then now we see death threats return. As soon as he got sworn in, we were swamped with death threats and bigotry in our office and almost every social media platform that you open up.
Where do things stand with this looming government shutdown, with the deadline just about a little over a week away?
Yeah, I mean, we have to remind the public, the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the White House. It is important for also the public to understand that they are refusing so far to negotiate with us.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Now to an earthquake that rocked the San Francisco Bay Area. A 4.3 magnitude quake hit overnight. The epicenter was centered in Berkeley. The tremor was felt by more than 22,000, with some saying it jolted them out of their sleep. No injuries were reported. Some businesses had minor damage. Coming up, as pressure mounts to recognize Palestinian statehood, ABC takes you to the West Bank, where from on the ground, a two-state solution seems like anything but a viable option for those who live there.
إعدام بكل ما تحمل الكلمة من معنى، هو إعدام للحياة، إعدام للإنسان، إعدام للحيوان، إعدام لطبيعة الحياة، بيئة الحياة، تراثنا، ثقافتنا، تقاليدنا.
Then attention Costco shoppers. The recall just issued in more than a dozen states over listeria concerns. And singer Harry Styles secretly runs the Berlin Marathon, but it's his incredible finish that has everyone talking. Welcome back, everyone. French President Emmanuel Macron announced that France would recognize Palestinian statehood during an international peace conference at the UN General Assembly today, one day after the UK, Canada, Australia, and Portugal all said that they would do the same. They join a growing list of countries in doing so as outrage continues over Israel's military operations in Gaza. Both Israel and the United States have criticized these recognitions. We'll have more soon from Tom Soufi-Burridge on all this in a moment. But first, let's look at the recognition of a Palestinian state by the numbers. Including those previously mentioned countries, 10 nations have formally recognized a Palestinian state in recent days or are expected to do so soon. Those countries join the more than 140 nations that had already recognized Palestinian statehood. That number also includes 4 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the lone exception being the United States. This all comes less than 2 years after the October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel by Hamas, which spurred this war. And that war is still very much ongoing. Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry said on Sunday that 71 people had been killed in just 24 hours, with hundreds more injured. Meanwhile, 48 hostages taken on October 7th are still being held by Hamas to this day. Much of the focus at the United Nations General Assembly this week is on the war between Israel and Gaza. The U.S. allies say that they're recognizing Palestine in order to save the concept of a two-state solution. But the reality in the West Bank nearly 2 years after the October 7th attack demonstrates that a Palestinian state is arguably as far away as ever been in a long time. Our Tom Soufi-Burridge visited the West Bank this past week, the place that would be the core of a hypothetical Palestinian state, meeting Palestinians and Israelis, and found that a very different reality is happening on the ground. Here's tonight's Prime Focus.
From this Palestinian village in the West Bank, a view to a large and growing Jewish settlement over the other side of the valley. Some of America's closest allies recognizing Palestine as a state say they're acting to rescue the two-state solution. But in Bedouin communities like Beir al-Maskob in the West Bank, where Dawood Jahalin and his family have lived for 75 years, the threat of losing this land looms large, and the idea of a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel is a distant reality. Dawood shows us the view up onto the hillside of Malia Domin, a large and growing Israeli settlement. And preying on his mind, Israeli plans to vastly expand settlement building through this area. Dawood fears losing his entire way of life.
إعدام بكل ما تحمل الكلمة من معنى، هو إعدام للحياة، إعدام للإنسان، إعدام للحيوان، إعدام لطبيعة الحياة، بيئة الحياة، تراثنا، ثقافتنا، تقاليدنا.
This Israeli activist has been campaigning against an Israeli settlement expansion plan for this area for more than 20 years.
And all this area will be planned as residential area.
So this Bedouin community uses this land for their animals?
Yeah, it's the grazing area.
We're talking about thousands of housing units right across this area of the West Bank.
Yeah.
Now, with those countries recognising Palestine, Israel is moving to fast-track those plans, which, if realised, could effectively split the West Bank in two.
Israel is using planning and building as a weapon.
You talk about this being ethnic cleansing. Is there any doubt in your mind?
It is ethnic cleansing, yeah.
There's no debate about that in your mind?
No, it's actually this plan is a war crime because it will act as a weapon, as forcible transfer of people.
But in the settlement up on the hill called Ma'ale Adumim, which is home to 40,000 people, residents believe this is Jewish land. And shopkeeper Shlomi Ram welcomes a plan, now approved by the Israeli government, to double the size of this city.
If we are not going to build, they are going to build. The Arab people are going to build. So I think it's very good things.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in Ma'ale Adumim earlier this month, celebrating its expansion. And this far-right member of his coalition government says the idea of a Palestinian state coexisting peacefully with Israel is, quote, science fiction.
Every time you appease them, you get more terror. What's not working in the way some people in the world, for anyone who is still talking about a Palestinian state, that's the best defense I have, that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
The beauty of this land hides a harsh reality. Two peoples, two visions, locked in a conflict where hope for peace is hard to find.
Our thanks to Tom Sufi-Burridge for that. Coming up, NASA is getting a few new astronauts. We'll tell you who they are. And we sit down with Dame Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, to talk about what was behind her decision to walk away from her role and what she's doing next. As the world's leaders gather in New York for the UN General Assembly, former New Zealand Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Dame Jacinda Ardern, is back in the spotlight. She's now living here in America and is talking about why she suddenly left the highest profile job in New Zealand and what's next. So as you know, world leaders are gathered not too far away from here for the UN General Assembly. It was about 7 years ago that you addressed the UN General Assembly. Do you miss at all having that seat at the table?
Yeah, look, there's no doubt if you're someone that goes into politics because you care about the state of the world and you want to make a difference, then you do miss the platform, that opportunity to add your voice. But that doesn't mean that I regret my decision. I still believe it was the right thing to do.
There's a moment in the documentary Prime Minister that's now on HBO where you start out with a lecture with your students and you're saying we have to rehumanize each other. How do you suggest that we go about doing that?
Yeah, I think we live in a world where it's very, very easy in the way that we communicate with one another to slip into really binary thinking, black and white. You know, my view is good, yours is evil. And when we build that binary thinking, it's very easy to then dehumanize one another. We live in a time that is incredibly fraught. We have significant challenges, climate change, global conflict, inequality. All of them require us to have the ability to at least discuss and debate respectfully, remembering that despite diverse views and opinions, we do have a shared humanity.
We must redouble our efforts to work as a global community.
When you spoke at the UN General Assembly, you talked about how there were basically two options. You can figure out what the problems are and try to work towards solutions, or you can essentially turn a blind eye to it. 7 years later, how do you feel that the world has done with addressing these issues?
One of the oldest tools in the playbook for politics is the weaponization of fear, especially in times of uncertainty, and fear then coupled with blame. We've been through tough times before as a global community, not least, wars, pandemics before now, and in 1918, the Great Depression. And, I look to the likes of the leadership like FDR during those times, not pretending the solutions are easy, sitting down and explaining to people the options the government has, not weaponizing fear and blame. So that's the kind of leadership I spend a lot of time now sharing, talking about, amplifying and supporting politicians who use that form of leadership as opposed to some of the others.
We mentioned the documentary Prime Minister on HBO. I want to take a look at a clip.
I have waves of incredible anxiety. Not about losing, but about winning. I think I have probably natural levels of anxiety for someone who's 37 years old and 10 weeks ago did not anticipate being in this position. And who's also pregnant.
And we'll get to the pregnancy part in a moment, but take us back to that moment. Of course, you don't love superlatives, but you were the youngest female ever to become the head of a nation around the world. What was the weight of that?
Yeah, I think actually when you're doing the job of campaigning to try and, win government, that is your focus. Your focus is entirely domestic, getting that, doing the very best in the role that you have. And I found myself with 7 weeks' notice, basically. My boss came to work one day and he quit and he nominated me, and I had 7 weeks to try and prove myself to New Zealand to become Prime Minister.
Of course, you faced a number of personal threats. There were those who called you the Queen of Woke, a girl in a skirt on a power trip, and the Conservative coalition would also often compare you to Nazi Germany. You see the division that exists here in America at this time, especially with the increased threats and actual acts of violence on many politicians. Anything that we can learn from your time in office when you were facing that years ago?
Leadership matters in those moments. And my view is that violence begets violence, hate leads to hate. Those really strong, important messages, certainly from my experience from leadership, just denouncing that and trying to maintain a standard of expectation that we conduct ourselves in the way that we would hope others would too.
Once you made the decision that you were going to step down, did it immediately feel like a load off?
It did. I think when you see power as responsibility, then the moment that you make the decision that you're walking away and that role is then removed, it's almost instant. And it even surprised me how quickly it left my shoulders.
Would you ever consider returning to life in politics?
In New Zealand? No.
Anywhere, anywhere.
Well, it's as should be the case. Obviously, New Zealand is the place where I'm eligible to run, and I've left. And I have great faith in all the people, my team who are still there. They don't need me.
What's ahead for you?
Yeah, I will, so long as I feel useful in the world. And at the moment, talking about the importance of empathetic leadership in these times is something that I feel like is a useful contribution. So that's what I'm happy doing, and that's what I'll keep doing, finding those ways to be useful.
But again, you have the weight of another job, perhaps a bigger job, depending on how you look at it, of being mom to Nave. And then you end up writing a book. What inspired the book?
Oh, procrastination. I was meant to be writing a speech to depart from Parliament, which is a tradition in New Zealand, and I just couldn't bring myself to write those words. So I thought instead, what would I want to capture about being only the second leader in the world to have a baby while in office, and what it is to be a mother while trying to run a country? So I wrote Mum's Busy Work, and it came quickly because it is predominantly based on things that Neve would say or do while I was in office. So it really is her book as much as mine.
Is that often your advice to mothers? Because I'm sure you get it all the time about how do I balance being a mom and a working mom outside of the house?
You can do it all, but don't do it alone. Don't expect to do it alone. And so that's one of my big messages. And the second is everybody, even if you're a world leader, feels guilty all of the time.
That's really good to hear, actually. As a working mom myself, I think we all need to give ourselves that grace.
So give yourself the grace,
As a mom, I think it's so important, the message that you have in the book for parents. Realizing we're not alone in this struggle.
I've heard it's made a couple of parents cry. So there you go. Not the intention, but there it is.
Not surprising at all. Jacinda, we thank you so much for the time and
conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Her new book, Mom's Busy Work, is out in stores tomorrow. And her new documentary, Prime Minister, is streaming on HBO Max starting September 30th. Coming up, the Super Bowl champ soaking in a shocking last-second victory. And this wasn't the only crazy ending on a block kick yesterday. We break it all down with ESPN analyst and former NFL coach Herm Edwards. And take a look at a sight not seen in the Chicago River in nearly 100 years. Why hundreds decided to brave the cold to plunge in. Spider-Man suffers a concussion while filming on set when squirrels attack, and an impressive finish for singer Harry Styles, who secretly ran this year's Berlin Marathon. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. Costco is recalling a ready-to-eat seafood dish due to listeria concerns. The retailer sold the Kirkland brand ahi tuna wasabi poke in 33 states. The containers carry a sell-by date of September 22nd. Costco says the contamination risk is linked to the green onions in the product. Anyone who bought the product can contact Costco for a full refund. A health scare for a Marvel superhero. Tom Holland is taking a temporary break from filming Spider-Man Brand New Day. It's a movie by our parent company, Disney. The actor suffered a mild concussion, but is expected to return to work after a few days, ABC has confirmed. The 29-year-old shared a production photo last month showing himself in costume while filming in Scotland. In the northern San Francisco Bay Area, residents are on alert because of an aggressive squirrel that has sent 2 neighbors to the emergency room for claw and bite marks.
This clomped onto my leg and it was just hanging on, and I was like, get off me, get off me.
Victims say they've been jumped by the squirrel while out walking or in their yard.
The squirrel tried to jump to my face, and then my arm was completely overcome by the squirrel.
Flyers have been posted warning others about the reddish squirrel. Experts say the behavior typically comes from a squirrel that was fed by humans early in life and gets aggressive. And Harry Styles seems to have been doing less late-night talking and a lot more early morning running. The 31-year-old ran the Berlin Marathon and finished with an impressive time of less than 3 hours, 2 hours, 59 minutes and 13 seconds to be exact. The 3-time Grammy winner apparently ran under the pseudonym Stead Sarandos, joining some 55,000 other runners. For the first time in nearly 100 years, the Chicago River was deemed clean enough to host a swimming competition. Event organizers say 263 athletes took part in the 2-mile-long Chicago River swim to raise money for ALS research.
20 years ago, this would not have been possible. We've brought back plants that have reoxygenated the river, helped pull out some of the pollutants.
The EPA says the water quality of the river meets all necessary guidelines. NASA is getting some new astronauts at a ceremony at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. 6 women and 4 men are set to begin a 2-year training program. And for the first time ever, the out-of-this-world crew features more women than men.
These 10 men and women are your 24th astronaut candidate class.
After training, the new astronauts will crew missions to the International Space Station, the Moon, and one day, possibly Mars. NASA selected this group of 10 astronauts from more than 8,000 applicants. Time now for Monday Evening Quarterback. Breaking down the weekend that was in football, and week 3 of the NFL season has exceeded the hype. Here to talk it all out with us is ESPN analyst and former coach, Mr. Herm Edwards. How you doing, Coach?
I'm well. How are you? Exciting games this week. It seems like the National Football League never lets us down, right?
That is for sure. What, on your Sunday Fun Day, what stood out to you in particular?
Well, look, I got to give the Colts some love because the Indianapolis Colts, believe it or not, they're 3-0. But the team that's exciting, and it seems like every week they find a way to win a game, and it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are also 3-0. And Baker Mayfield is playing excellent right now. Had a fabulous year last year, threw 41 touchdowns. And right now, after, 3 games, he's got 6 touchdown passes. So I like the way the Bucs are playing. They're in that division, the NFC South, by the way.
Let's talk about my team, Fly Eagles Fly. People keep talking about the tush push. Obviously, it happened reportedly in the game twice yesterday. What do you say? You think that they should let it fly or no?
Well, I say this. Don't get in fourth and 2 or less. You don't have to worry about it, right? You don't have to defend it. I think it's fabulous. You know what? It's a copycat league. I'm surprised no one else is doing it. The Eagles have mastered it. I do believe it'll probably be the last year of the tush push.
All right. A number of games featured key blocked field goals. Some, as we mentioned, returned for touchdowns. What do you make of those block kicks?
Well, poor special teams execution, and it's been that way the first 3 weeks in the National Football League. Block kicks, talking about your team, Philly, my team too. Big block kick, they win the game, right? And not only was it blocked, the big fella ran in there for a touchdown. At about 20 yards when he was running, I started getting tired. I said, come on, big fella, is he going to make it? He made it. But special teams are a third of the football plays, and sometimes they're overlooked until something bad happens. Remember, the Green Bay Packers lost. Blocked. A lot of block kicks this week.
You mentioned the Indianapolis Colts. Many people might describe them as one of the more surprising teams so far, currently unbeaten with new quarterback Daniel Jones. If you were a betting man, are you betting on the Colts?
Until they lose a game, and they're playing well right now. Think about this: the Colts are 3-0, and the Texans are 0-3. A team, the Texans, has won that division the last 2 years in a row. They're 0-3, and the Colts are 3-0. And that's not Johnny Unitas playing or Peyton Manning playing. You mentioned it's Daniel Jones playing. Coach Steichen has done a fabulous job with that football team.
It's already been a wild week, but we're speaking right now with one game left to play tonight between the Lions and the Ravens. What can we expect?
Well, these are two excellent teams. Some had projected these two teams maybe playing again in the big game, the Super Bowl. But both teams have really exciting offenses. When you think about the Ravens, it's Derrick Henry and it's Lamar Jackson. And when you think about the Detroit Lions, obviously, it's Jared Goff and the running game and the play action. And all of a sudden, Detroit has kind of found their way again with this offense. And so this ought to be a really fun game to watch.
All right, Herm Edwards, so appreciate your analysis and insight, Coach. Thanks so much. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.